Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan, and I'm glad to have you with me today. And I do have a very special guest with us today. She is Jodi Krangle. She is a voiceover artist, and she also has the audio branding podcast. Jodi, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Dan. I appreciate you having me.
I'm glad to have you with me today. And so Jodi does commercial voice acting, and I have to admit, Jodi, I'm a little bit intimidated talking to you, just because you're a voice actor. So I'm kind of thinking, well, is she judging my sound right now?
No. Don't
Okay,
worry.
okay,
It's
because
all
yours is very
good.
good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I mean, I have a podcast about sound, so I'm kind of picky about that for at least my end.
Yeah, Jodi, would you like to tell us a little about yourself and how you first became interested in this area of expertise?
Well, I started volunteering my time at the CNIB, which is the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, back in 1995 and 96. I did that for about a year. We were doing magazine articles onto reel to reel tape at the time. So it was way back then. But I enjoyed both the voicing and the technology. I found it all really fascinating. So that kind of percolated in the back of my head for a long time. I was doing internet marketing and SEO from about 95 until 2007. And then when Google became it and I got really incredibly bored, I decided I would, tackle this whole voice acting thing that I had had in the back of my head for a while. And I hung out a shingle on the World Wide Web with a website, and the rest is kind of history. Although I had a lot to learn before I actually ended up with paying clients and before I really felt like I was offering something that would be professional grade.
There's a website out there that people can use to look for voice acting jobs. That it's mainly focused around like animation projects and that sort of thing. Is there something similar for like the when you're looking for work for a business?
In this day and age, I think reaching out and contacting people directly is really the best way to do it. And just keeping things simple. If you are looking for work, you're looking to make a connection, see if they have a roster of people. If you reach out to video production companies or ad agencies, the smaller ones that are regional, they'll often answer you right back. I mean, if you're going for the big guys, you may not hear an answer, but the smaller companies are always looking for people, and you never know. Also, let everyone you know in your life know what you do if you want to get into this, because if you're in it and you have a demo and you have a website and you're ready to go, you have the professional studio to make the recordings in, and you have a business that's ready to go, then everyone around you should know what you do. And you never know who you'll hear from or what they'll need. So,
Okay. Well, speaking of websites, you do have a website,
mhm.
voiceoversandvocals.com. People can go there and they can listen to some of your work as well as some demos that you've done.
Mhm.
And I actually have one right now that you did for Lindt Chocolate. I'd like to play that now, if that's okay.
Sure.
Inhale its aroma. Taste its perfection. Hear its gentle crack. Awaken your senses with Lindt Excellence.
So you did this one for Lindt Chocolate.
Mhm.
How did that one come about? You just reached out to them and it's like, hey,
Actually, I have several agents. So, what when you're a voice actor, a lot of what goes into that is having your finger in many different pies. So, yes, definitely reach out to people directly if you want to work with them, or you know that they have a roster where they do videos that require voiceovers at some point. And that is an excellent way to go. There are also many agents all around the world, local to you, regional to other regions, and you can have multiple in different regions. So that Lint commercial was actually through my agent in Toronto, Foster Talent, and they really, I auditioned for it, and then I got chosen out of however many people were auditioning for that. And I've been doing work for Lint for, I think, 3 years now. And they're awesome. It's so much fun because it's an odd phenomenon, but you would think that the sexy voice would get a lot more business than it does, but it's actually a little tricky because you don't want to alienate the women and you don't want to attract too much of the men. You know what I mean? So it's a very delicate balance. And the only way that you really get to use it is when you get to be sensual for food. it tends to have that kind of a feeling for it when you're talking about things like chocolate. So, but otherwise it's a voice type that I really don't use a lot. Because you have to be very careful.
Would you say that voice acting has always come naturally for you, or did you struggle with it at first?
Oh, I think we all struggle with it at first. And it's also a very different business from the first time that I started. So when I started, it was 2007, and our sensibilities as far as advertising is concerned have changed a lot since 2007. So right now, we're mostly concerned with authenticity, like super authentic. And especially the younger generations like Gen Z and all of you need to be really super authentic or you are just they're going to tune you out. So in the beginning when I was doing this, there wasn't such a push on sounding natural. It was very much, yes, you are the announcer in the background and yeah, you're talking about this product and you're selling this product. And now it's almost like you're not selling this product. You're just telling people about it and whatever they want to do, they can do. I happen to like this product, but it's up to you, kind of. But it's a shift that's happened over time. That's really simplifying it. But the idea of it getting more natural as the years go by is more and more a thing. And then it's the shades of that natural. So is that natural where it's so flat you're barely giving anything? Like, okay, this is what you want. This is what you get. Then, okay, you can do whatever you want, right? To, well, I really like this product, but you can do whatever you want to do with it. And here it is. This is what it is. To a little more dynamic. So it depends on how much of the dynamics you want in there. So there's a flat read, there's a natural dynamic read, like I'm just talking to you and it's really talking to one person. You're giving them an idea of what it is they're getting. And it's funny because in an audition, you need to be as authentic as possible. But then what happens in the actual session is that the people who are involved in the advertising for it direct you into a place where it's no longer quite as natural. So really the work is the audition because that's the work we do on our own. So a lot of what a voice actor does these days is figure out how to interpret a script on our own so that we can get the job. And then once we're in the job, that's the easy part because they just direct you. You're in a session, they direct you to where they want you to be and you do what they tell you to. That's the easy part.
Now, when you do voice acting, you're putting a piece of yourself out there. I mean, is that like, do you consider yourself a naturally outgoing person?
Oh God, no. No, I am a raging introvert as it happens. And I think a lot of voice actors can say that they are that. It's a pretty good mix. But I'd say a lot of introverts work in voiceover because you're often not seen. You're only heard, right? And a lot of this is being done in my own booth at home. So I don't even have to go socialize with anyone. It's not, I could sit at home and do this. Not that I don't like socializing, but I think when it comes to introversion, it's all about how you get your energy back. So if I'm in front of people for too long in a day, I get exhausted. And voice acting is one of those things that you can do at home by yourself. So it doesn't, I mean, not that it doesn't take energy, but it takes creativity. It doesn't necessarily take energy, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
My day is still, I still have my spoons, if that makes sense. My spoons are still here. But you know, my creativity is used in the acting. But the acting was something I had to learn. So I'm a musician. That's where I get my sensibility for all of the voice acting and how to use my voice and what I know what to do with it. And the acting part of that, the knowing when to be natural and when not to be, the knowing what a script calls for and knowing who I'm talking to and understanding the different tone that I might use for, say, talking to my mom as opposed to talking to a friend over coffee, as opposed to talking to a 7-year-old child, it's a very different thing that I had to learn over time. And it is really talking to one person. It's not talking to a room full of people. Usually. Depends on the script, of course, but usually it's talking to one person. What I usually do is advertising, marketing, branding. And that's usually one person because that's the one person that's hearing you in their ears.
What kind of like I guess what kind of training do you do? Do you do you train your voice at all? Do you have like a
Mostly
routine?
the training for my voice mostly came from singing for a long time. But as far as the rest is concerned, I did and I do on a regular basis have coaching for voiceover. So every coach has their own little tips and tricks that they pass along. And I take little bits and pieces from everyone I work with. And it's really good to keep up with that kind of thing because, like I said, the sensibilities of advertising have changed over time. So while I am watching advertising now and seeing where it's going, there are people who are much more immersed in it than even I am, and they understand where the sensibilities are going and what the future might hold. So how you train for that is different with every coach, but they have a better and deeper understanding of where the advertising industry is going, and they can anticipate what I'll need to know. So I like training with new people all the time because I learn something new all the time.
You mentioned being a musician. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that and what kind of music you do?
Mostly I do jazz swing, sort of like jazz torch songs. You know, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, Sarah Vaughan, you know, that kind of stuff. Uh, Love it all. And I really only gig once a year. I do one performance with a 9-piece band in Atlanta every year in January and have so much fun with it. But other than that, I am here in my home studio doing backup vocals for people or just singing on my own. And I have an album out there that I did in 2015 with a friend of mine in the UK, in Leicester, and his name is Chris Conway. And he's a musician who's been doing this for 30 plus years on his own. Fantastic musician, plays everything under the sun. This is someone who even knows how to play theremin. Do you know what the theremin is?
Never heard of it.
Okay, so you know the that they do on Star Trek? You know
Yes.
that sound? That's a theremin. Yeah. So because it's like an electrical impulse kind of instrument. So it has a pulse, and then you play it by moving your finger around the pulse. So that's the basics. So it sounds very electronica weird, but it's from I don't know, the 60s. Like they've had it for a long time, but he knows how to play that. Like he knows how to play everything. It's amazing. So in 2015, the technology finally got good enough for us to exchange WAV and MP3 files. And, between where he was in Leicester and me here north of Toronto in Canada. And we did an album together that's called Time Will Tell. And that is on Spotify at the moment. So if anyone wants to hear it, they can totally just download it.
Yeah,
It's there.
I was just about to ask if you had a separate website for your music.
JodiKranglemusic.com will get you
Okay.
to a sample. And I believe there's a link to the Spotify from there, but if not, you can find it on Spotify. Like I said,
Okay.
it's from 2015, so it's a little old now.
Now, for voice acting, has there ever been a job that was proposed to you and you were just like, nah, not something I want to be associated with?
Usually if that happens, I mean, yeah, I'll say no. You know, some there's all sorts of stuff. Like someone asks me to do something smutty, or they ask me to do something that is political that I have absolutely no interest in getting involved in, or you know, someone asks me to put my voice into an AI model, and like I have no interest in doing that. So, especially not for the really crap rates that they offer. So why would I do that to myself? Like, I don't want to be competing with myself. That makes no sense. Plus, I work in advertising a lot. So I don't want my AI voice to have a conflict with what I'm doing with my regular voice. That's silly and damaging to my career. So why would I do that? It's not like I have a problem with AI inherently. It's just, it's not, I don't want to do that with my voice. Or if I do, I want to have total control.
Right. No, makes sense.
Mm.
Is AI a big concern in your industry for the voice acting?
Well, yes and no. Yeah, I think it is a concern for some people because a lot of people are not charging what the voiceover is really worth, and they're undercharging, and then they're being replaced by AI because there's not a whole lot of difference. And also, they're being replaced by AI because there's not any acting involved. And if there's no acting involved, then sure, yeah, you can be replaced by an AI, which has no acting ability either. So, no difference, right? But I think that inherently as human beings, whether or not we can consciously tell whether an AI voice is real or not, whether we're listening to an AI voice or a regular human voice, we subconsciously are not making that connection, that it's a human to human connection. And that allows us to not pay as much attention as you would hope you would in an advertising campaign. So I think people are only just now beginning to understand that there is a subconscious connection. And if it's not there, your advertising is going to be inefficient and ineffectual. And you don't want that. They paid a lot of money for that.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't pay for the voiceover, they paid a lot for the visuals. They pay a lot for the placement. You know, you don't want to waste that money.
Yeah, definitely. Now, for someone who might just be getting started in voice acting or is interested in starting, how important is having the right equipment?
I would say it's important, but it is not the first thing to do. So you can get by on decent. You can get by on, let's say, good sound treatment in your room, which does not have to cost a lot, and say a $300 mic and a $300 audio interface that connects to your computer. Does not have to be complicated. I'd say for about $1,000, you can probably do all of it. And you could get by and do just fine as a, starting voice actor. And I don't think I don't think anyone would notice that your equipment is, less than. I don't think that they would, because it's still better than, 3/4 of the people out there who don't even bother, right? As long as you're not recording in your bathroom and you have some sound treatment in your room and you are close enough to your mic and your mic is a condenser mic. So you want a condenser mic with a cardioid pattern, because that way it's not picking up the whole room around you. It's only picking up an area in front of your face. Then you should be okay. And really then at that point, it's getting your own personal branding together, getting your regular clients together, because regular clients are what are going to keep you in business, and getting a few agents under your belt. They don't have to be top tier. They can be regional agents, at least to start. And that is how a career is built. And then as you make money, you buy more expensive equipment that you feel will make your sound better. But it takes time, and it also takes training. So coaching is very important too. And like I said, the coaching directions are going to change over time because voiceover changes over time.
Jodi, do you have any strange facts that you can share about sound?
Well, in my audio branding podcast, I talk with a lot of really interesting people. And one of those people was Steve Keller from SiriusXM. He's their sonic strategy director. And he talked about how sound can influence how we taste. So he's done multiple experiments on this. And they did Studio Resonate is what they're called, the advertising agency for SiriusXM and their properties, which I believe is also Pandora and SoundCloud. And I think it was Stitcher at one point. But anyway, they did a promo for a energy drink called Propel back in, I believe, 2016 at this point. So in the before times. And they had places where people could listen in headphones and take a drink and dial in from an iPad what they were hearing in their ears, whether they wanted the drink to taste saltier or sweeter, because it was an energy drink. So it's a lot like Gatorade, and it's kind of like an electrolyte drink. So it could be salty or it could be sweet. And they were using this iPad and had the headphones on and changing the way that the drink tasted to them just by hearing stuff. And it was the same drink. So they've done this with beer. They can dial in how much bitterness is there in beer, and by just what you hear. I recently had a fellow on my podcast named Pavle Marinkovic, who did an experiment on this with chocolate. And he experimented by letting people hear certain pieces of music and having them taste a piece of chocolate. And they were tasting more bitterness or less bitterness, depending on what they were hearing in their ears. It was the same piece of chocolate. So our senses are very tied together, and our taste buds are tied into what we're hearing in a lot of different ways. So yeah, our brains are strange.
I wonder if for the chocolate, like I wonder if that could be based on personal preference. Like if you're listening to music that you don't like, is it going to taste bitter?
I don't think so. I think the idea there was that lower registered instruments would make it more bitter, and higher based instruments like piano and harp, flute, would make it sweeter.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think that was kind of the idea. So like low brass instruments or cello or something like that were likely to make it taste more bitter. And yeah, so it was interesting. He has a book out called I should look it up. But he has a book out that talks about this, and I do highly recommend it. And I will look it up. and have it for you in a moment.
All right. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your podcast?
Sure. It's called Audio Branding, and it is all about the power of sound and how it influences our buying decisions and our daily lives. And Pavle was just recently on the podcast talking about that chocolate experiment, which was fascinating. But he talks about the whole life cycle of food as it pertains to how sound would influence it. So it's really fascinating. Okay, so it's called Sounds from Farm to Fork and Back. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So it's all about the food cycle and how it's influenced by sound. It's really fascinating stuff. And I really enjoyed our conversation. But I talked to people like Pavle, I talked to people like Steve Keller, I talked to advertising execs, I talked to podcasters and musicians and people who are in communications and all sorts of people who work in sound, usually on behalf of clients. So they have a definite goal in mind rather than just, being in sound. But it depends. It depends. If they have something really interesting to share, I'm all that happy to talk with them. I have a few interviews coming up that are going to be really, really interesting. I was telling you about that fellow. Actually, I was telling you about the idea that we unconsciously know that AI is not a human to human connection. And the fellow who I'm going to have on my podcast is going to talk a little more about that. I believe I have an interview coming up with him tomorrow, actually.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, it should be really interesting. So, but he has hard numbers, which I think is really fascinating. So, the study of neuroscience when it comes to sound is just amazing.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Jodi, you are also a geek.
I am totally a geek. Yes.
Oh, I was a little bit surprised because when I found out that you like did commercials and stuff, I was a little bit surprised that you weren't involved in like the geeky side of things too, like anime and that sort of thing. Has
Mm-hmm.
that ever been of interest to you, or not really?
I've watched a lot of anime and I do enjoy it a lot, but maybe less so now, but you do kind of need to be in a certain place in order to do a lot of that stuff. Texas and LA, I believe, Texas and California are kind of the big ones for those. And I'm not anywhere near there. So less likely to happen for me. And I don't know. It just never. If it landed in my lap or someone asked me to do a voice, I would consider doing it. But it's not something that I have a demo specifically for. And if I was really interested in it, I would have a demo for it.
What's your favorite anime?
What is my favorite anime right now? Yona of the Dawn. I just saw that. And
Not
it's
familiar with it.
Yeah, it's actually 2 seasons. I think there's 24 episodes, and it's kind of a historical fantasy kind of deal. And there's much more in the manga than there is in the anime that they actually did an anime for, because there's many volumes. It's huge. That and Apothecary Diaries, which is another one that's on there that I really enjoy.
Okay. Do you
Yeah.
like going to like anime conventions or anything like that?
I don't. No. No, not generally. It's really, I mean, I've known of anime and I've watched it before, back when it was on Laserdisc. I was watching some of it. But it's really only been in the last couple of years that I've gotten really into it. So, but
Okay.
I've always been an animation fan, like from day one. So it's just a branch of animation for me. It's just, it has a specific sensibility that I enjoy.
You have some experience playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
Um, how long have you
Yeah.
been playing that?
Wow. Since I was 18, which is a long time ago now. Yeah. So that's kind of how I keep my improv going, because it's very improv heavy depending on who you're playing with and how much into role play they are. But yeah, I enjoy doing that a lot, and I play a lot of games right now, like 4 or 5 of them, and they're all remote. Most of them are remote. One of them is live, but
Oh,
but
that's
most
a
of them are
lot.
remote, which means I can play with people anywhere in the world. So 2 of the groups are actually European. I'm like the only North American, and one of them, I think most of the people are in Seattle, and uh, where's the yeah, one of them is local, and yeah, another one, 2 of the people are in Belgium, and one's in the Virgin Islands, I believe. So yeah, it's
Wow, that's
yeah, all over the world. It's just the whole, you know, I would never say that the pandemic was a good thing, but one of the things that it did do is it accelerated the ability for us to do things remotely and make it work. So things like Zoom got much better, Discord got much better. These kinds of things. Like most of the gaming that I do is through Discord or live. And like the online D&D character sheets and stuff like that became possible, and all of that. So lots of things that weren't so great, but things that definitely helped people connect better online, which made the world a smaller place, I guess, which I like to think is actually a good thing, not a bad thing.
yeah, yeah. Well, Jody, I think the obvious question here is, do you do voices for your characters?
Sometimes I do. Yeah. Especially since watching anime. I will say that much. Yeah. But I'm awful with accents. I just am so bad with accents. So I don't even try those. I just, yeah. But I have
Are
a
you
lot of fun with it.
are you more of a player or a dungeon master?
Oh, definitely a player. I am not a dungeon master. I'm more, I'm a player. I've never run a game myself.
Any
It's a lot of
favorite?
work.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I've done it. I know.
Okay, yes. Glad to hear it.
Do you have any favorite classes that you like to play?
I do like playing clerics. I really enjoy them. The whole healing, nurturing thing, I kind of like. And it's really fun to play a healer type that has something else going on. Like I think one of my characters baked cookies all the time and kissed people's boo boos. Like it was fun. So I don't know. It's fun to find the quirk. There's a quirk with every character, and it's fun to find that. I'm sure that's the same for anyone in anime or animation or video games, or you find the quirk with that character and then you just know who that character is.
Yeah. Now, do you limit yourself to just D&D, or do you play other games as well?
I've played all sorts of games over the
Oh,
years. My goodness, World of Darkness, Star Wars, Star Trek, any space game, D20, anything. The one game that I'm actually live now playing is a playtester for a brand new game that this person is creating. His name is Joe Nidalee, and he is online. He's created something called Lorefolk. Um, and it's absolutely a fantastic type of game. It still uses the typical D20 and all of that, but it organizes it in a different way. And I find it fascinating the way that he came up with this whole game system. So yeah, it is a completely new game system. It uses the customary um, regular D&D dice, but it really is a new system all its own, and we're playtesting it so that he can see how it works,
that's
and
awesome.
it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Hmm.
Man, um, do you do you have any like favorite memories of gaming? Like something really spectacular that happened that you never forgot? Anything amazing like that?
Oh, way back, I had a group of friends that played together for about 25 years. And when we were in the beginning of playing together, we were in, I believe it was Greyhawk. So it was a Greyhawk campaign. So D&D. And I think at that time it was 3, 3.0, I think. We went to 3.5 and then missed 4 and went to 5. So it was 3, but the one thing that they never quite got right was the Blade Singer. And the Blade Singer is a really interesting class because it's very elf heavy because it takes a long time to learn. So you need to have the lifespan of an elf to figure it out. But it's kind of a mix of swordplay and magic. And I think the very first time that I came across that class was playing something like Hero Forge or something like that. It was like actually a board game where you would lay down the tiles, and they had pre-generated characters, and one of those pre-generated characters was a second edition Blade Singer, and it I found the whole class fascinating. So when I made a character for this new 3.0 campaign that we were doing, it was a Blade Singer. But the GM had to kind of make it all up from scratch because they really didn't know what to do with the class at that time. So he kind of made up like a whole society for the Blade Singers. And it was absolutely mind-blowing. He did a fantastic job with it, and it was so much fun. And what happened with that character kind of drove a lot of what we ended up doing for the entire campaign, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, the GM has a lot of power and can make or break that campaign, and that really made it for me. That character class kind of became my own rather than something that was printed in a book.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
When you're playing, um, I guess, do you follow the rules, or is your character usually like a troublemaker?
It depends on the character. Like
Right.
I've played rule makers and I've played rule breakers. So it depends on the campaign, and it depends on a lot of what the other players are doing as well. So I tend to prefer characters that work with a party as opposed to against it. If you're gonna have a party, I don't like the idea of working against that party. For me, it's a collaborative game. It's a collaborative storytelling game. So I would rather collaborate than,
Yes.
break things. um, but at the same time, I've played hackers and futuristic games and all sorts of interesting techno characters that build stuff that really shouldn't be available. Like that kind of stuff. It's
Yeah.
fun. It just depends
Yeah.
on who's running the game and how much of a stickler they are for the rules and what they'll creatively let their players get away with. It's
Right.
creativity.
That's the great thing about it. As you mentioned,
Yeah.
it's great for exercising your improv muscle.
Yes, exactly. And that's really the only way that I do it. I don't tend to go into improv classes or anything like that. I find it very uncomfortable, mostly from like an awkward social kind of point of view. I'd rather do it in a D&D setting where I can be as socially awkward as I want and my friends understand.
Yeah, because then you can just say it's the character, not you.
Exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned Star Trek earlier. Are you a big
Mhm.
Trekkie?
I am. Yeah. Yep. I've
Do you
watched all of it.
do you have a favorite version of it?
Uh, Lower Decks makes me laugh every time. I don't know if you are watching that at all. It's the animated. Uh, it's kind of a spoof on Star Trek, really, but it is Star Trek. And they just had a tie-in, not last year sometime, with Strange New Worlds, which I love. Strange New Worlds is awesome. If you've not watched it, I highly recommend it. And Discovery grew on me. I did not like it in the beginning because of what they did to the Klingons. Anyone who's watched it knows what I mean. But after the second season and all of the angst that went into that, things changed and the crew went elsewhere, and then it became way more interesting. So yeah, but I grew up on TNG. Like, I love it all. I've watched the original, of course, many times. Um, yeah, like all iterations of them. I don't think I have missed one.
Are you a fan of Star Wars too?
I am, yeah. Although I have not watched The Acolyte. Um, I'm just not all that interested in that kind of stuff. I did watch The Mandalorian and loved it, and all of the stuff involving that I thought was really fun. And I enjoyed all the movies too. Like every one of them had their entertaining moments. A lot of people have problems with the newest movies, but I went in there and enjoyed it. That's all.
Uh, have you always, have you always enjoyed geeky things?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was a voracious reader at a very young age. So, I came by it honestly, let's say.
It's kind of interesting how things have changed over the years, because
Hmm.
like a long time ago, like a lot of people got made fun of for being geeks and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
now it's almost like a badge of honor. It's like,
Well, it's because geeks run the world.
yeah, yeah,
I
we're
mean,
the cool
really.
people now.
Yeah. They're the people with the vision. That's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
What
we're in
kind of
good
stuff were you
company.
reading? What kind of
Yeah.
stuff were you reading back then?
Uh oh, Piers Anthony, although I should not have been. uh yeah, some of his stuff is really problematic now. Oh wow. Marion Zimmer Bradley was another one. Tanith Lee was another one. There's all sorts of really interesting authors that I grew up on. And strangely, Tolkien was not one of them. I didn't actually read Lord of the Rings until I was probably in my 30s. So, yeah, it just never resonated with me, I think, because I wanted some strong female characters and I was not finding them in that. And not surprisingly, because of when he wrote that, but, it's easier to find nowadays.
Are you still an avid reader?
Not as much as I used to be. Mostly I'm an avid watcher. And that tends to be where I spend a lot of my time. So
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Now, other than the gaming, do you have any other kind of hobbies that you enjoy?
Uh I mean, gaming kind of takes up a lot of that time. Uh the anime kind of takes up a lot of that time. The singing takes up a lot of that time. In general, yeah, that and reading when I can, and my voiceover work doesn't even feel like work either. Like I love it so much that it's not really like I'm working. It's just fun. So,
As all jobs should be.
well, yeah. I mean, it isn't always the case, so I know how lucky I am, definitely. But I didn't find voiceover until I was like fairly, already established as an adult. So, it I had many different projects and jobs. And I did them for a length of time and then got bored. And that was my pattern for a long time until I found voiceover, and now I've been doing that for 17 years and there's no sign of stopping. So
Outside of voice acting, do you have any future plans as far as projects that you'd like to work on?
well, mostly the podcast. I do love the podcast, and I'll keep on doing that. And yeah, that's probably another of the hobbies that takes up a lot of time as well. So yeah, there's only so much time in a day.
Darn it, yeah.
Gosh darn.
Yeah, if only we could
Yeah.
cast some kind of spell to like extend the day, or I don't know.
How often have I wished? Yes. But yeah, so far, not such a thing exists. So
Okay.
I'll just make the best of what I have.
Mm-hmm. Any interest though in like writing a book someday?
No,
No.
absolutely not. Actually, that is not one of my aspirations. I can write. It's not that I can't do it. It's that I do not enjoy it as much as maybe a novelist or someone who wants to write a
Right.
nonfiction book would need to have to enjoy it to really get it done. And that's why I'm doing the podcast. I'd much rather do it in audio.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, the website is voiceoversandvocals.com if people would like to check out some of your work. And they can also go there you said you do classes?
No, I don't actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a coach at all. I can
Okay.
direct people if they want a coach, depending on what genre they're interested in. But I am not a coach myself. But the podcast is off of that website too, in case they're interested. So,
Okay. Well, very cool.
Mhm.
Well, Jodi Krangle, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank everyone for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about my podcast, you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, no longer Twitter. I've kind of given up on that ship. But I started up a Blue Sky, so we'll see how that goes. Just search for A Happy Moment Podcast, and I will see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye.